The epic Casebook. In which Inspector Carr investigates. Good evening. There can be no doubt that the last few months have made all of us sit up and look at things we took for granted with a new and, I'm afraid, rather jaundiced eye. No, I'm not going to pontificate at the way we took many things for granted, believing they would be with us as long as civilization endures, confident that our lives would become richer and fuller, and our problems of day-to-day living become less as the years go by. Instead, all the brilliant research and invention of the technocrats and the scientists crumble before the dictates of countries hardly out of their primitive shells. Then there was Watergate and the bugging of the leading French satirical journal, scandals that brought to light personalities who made the one-time private investigator as old-fashioned as the penny-farthing bicycle. Today, fortunes are being exchanged in return for industrial, commercial, and political secrets. Technical skill has taken the place of the methods adopted by such characters as created by Raymond Chandler. All Perry Mason required was courage, an enormous appetite for women and alcohol, and reflexes that worked with lightning speed. Of course, Mason was a figment of that brilliant writer's imagination. Then, as now, the majority of private detectives are solid, patient foot-sloggers, shadowing their prey or ferreting out evidence so that someone can have grounds for a divorce. I don't suppose many of you will remember the name Percival Watson. For 15 years, he pounded the beat as a constable, and then set up as a private investigator. A drab, nondescript person whose name was to be emblazoned on the front page of every British newspaper and on the lips of every news commentator. For Watson was arrested and charged with the murder of one of the richest men in Europe. Let me tell you about it. I've called my story Murder by Assignment. I think I already told you that Watson had served his apprenticeship as a member of the force. I didn't associate the man featured in the Police Gazette as being charged with the murder of Sir Edward Stanbridge until his wife telephoned the Yard, made herself known to me, and begged for an interview.
They're all making a great mistake, Chief Inspector. He's just come out of hospital. Remember my Percy, when you were a sergeant at Vine Street? He wouldn't do a thing like that, but no one believes him.
Well, as soon as I put the phone down after talking to you, Mrs. Watson, I looked at the back files of the Police Gazette. Now, you want the truth. There's a very strong case against your husband. He was seen in the grounds of Stanbridge Court. There were fingerprints on the gun.
I know, but he explained all that. Oh, he shouldn't have broken into the house, but it was to help this woman. Oh, you must help us, please. Please, Chief Inspector.
Oh, all right. I won't promise anything, but the least I can do is to have a chat with your husband.
All right, Watson, on your feet.
Sergeant Carr. Oh, I beg your pardon, sir.
Oh, that's all right, Watson. It's been a long time. You needn't wait, Walter.
Very good, sir.
Remember me?
No, I don't want to be rude, sir, but as an ex-member of the force, I know my rights. I've made my statement. I'm not saying another word, not till my wife managed to get hold of Mr. Meadows.
Now, the man you claim commissioned you.
That's right.
Listen, Watson, it wasn't pleasant having to put an ex-policeman on a charge of murder. Don't you think that the entire Wiltshire Constabulary have been looking for a Harold Meadows? Besides, this is outside the metropolitan area, and my visit's a personal one for the moment. You and I worked together for 4 years. Crazy as it may sound, I believe your story.
You do so. Thank you. You travelled all the way from Salisbury to tell me this? No, I appreciate it, but I'm scared, Chief Inspector. Really, I am. I'm scared. It was 1,000,000 to 1 coincidence that I should break into that house just when there was an armed thug there.
Just a minute, Percy Watson. I've come here because that nice wife of yours called at the Yard. At the moment, your papers are with the DPP. Once the Director of Public Prosecution sets a date for your trial, we've had it. You'd have been charged already if Sir Edward hadn't managed to take a shot at you before he died.
But I didn't
All right,
see...
I've just come from Wiltshire headquarters. I've looked through the docket. It's too nonsensical for it not to be true. Tell me about this man Meadows. Now, you've been in hospital, 3 weeks, so
Right.
all this must have happened nearly a month ago. Oh, the breaking and entering, I mean. When did you first meet Meadows?
I came to see him March the 12th. Then he just arrived from New York. He was a member of the American Association of Private Investigators. How did you get to me, Mr. Meadows?
Well, sir, we didn't. We just looked up a list of British private eyes. There's so many phonies in the States. We knew the same thing operated here, so we took your name and address from your association list. As you're nearest to that swine's residence...
Swine?
Please, just let me begin at the beginning, sir.
All right.
You've heard of the Vanderbilts. Well, my client is Miss Martha Vanderbilt. She was over here last fall. There she met this guy, this smooth-talking Romeo. Well, there's no need to tell you much more, except that my client was crazy enough to send this smart operator certain letters, which, if they're seen by her father, will mean that she'll be disinherited to the tune of at least $10 million.
Blackmail, huh?
You'll catch on fast, Mr. Watson. I may as well tell you my client has already paid into a Swiss bank 2 lots of the equivalent of 10,000 of your English pounds. These guys never stop, you know that. Once they get hold of a sucker...
Anyone I hate, it's a blackmailer. Mr. Meadows, before I retired to Wiltshire, I was a member of the Metropolitan Police.
Me too. Most of us in this profession are ex-cops.
Well, why don't you let me go to the police? Your client won't be mentioned.
No dice. This boy knows his onions. I've got photostatic copies of all his letters, typed, of course. You'll see that he warns that if Miss Vanderbilt goes to the police, or if he's arrested, his accomplices in the States have instructions to release the letters to these filthy tabloids. See now why we have to work carefully?
What do you expect me to do?
Get those letters back. The fee is 5,000 English pounds.
But I'm an investigator, not a negotiator. How?
I don't know how. All I'm authorized to say is that there's 5,000 pounds in your expenses. Here's the man's name and address. Just before my client returned to the States, she went to what was once her love nest. Pleaded with him to return the letters. He just laughed. I can tell you this. The letters are in an old-fashioned safe with one of those heavy locks. Frankly, I'd be taking a look at the place myself. There's a fire, huh?
Shows what greed does for you. £5,000 in my expenses. Now, the place was a large seaside cottage.
Yes.
Lying in its own ground.
Caistor-on-Sea.
Yeah, well, I drove down to Caistor, made inquiries in the village. I learned that the man was staying at this rented cottage, and I foolishly decided to case the joint. I broke in at about 3 o'clock in the morning. Right. Well, I'll be. The safe's open. A gun. What? It was a blinding flash, and I woke up in hospital. Don't you see, Inspector Carr? It's this other guy, his Slapsy. He did the shooting.
Yes, I've read Slapsy Hart's statement. You owe your life to him. You're being framed, but Slapsy didn't frame you. All right, Watson. I'll get you off the hook. Hello, Slapsy.
Blimey. Here, I'm not being booked, am I? They told me in Wiltshire I could go home. But I'd be needed as a witness. I was down in that, Governor. I wasn't going to nick nothing. I was just
save it,
breaking
Slapsy. I'm not here to arrest you. I've asked the Home Secretary if I could take over the investigation. Well, aren't you going to ask me in, Slapsy?
Here, you're not going to pin the murder on me, are you? Just because this Watson was once so busy.
Are you going to ask me in, or are you not?
Oh, all right, come on. Only lodge here, you know. Fred's out.
Just as well. Which is your room?
Oh, through here. That's it. I better close the door. There's a lot of nosy parkers live round here, you know.
Well, what's your story?
I was mad, I tell you. I come out of Wiltshire jail the week before. I hitchhiked to Caistor. 30 bob they give me. 30 measly bob, that's all. I mean, that didn't last long. Well, I was hungry. These holiday houses, they're a piece of old rope. I mean, I just thought if I
Cut the
could take
cackle.
it...
You've been promised indemnity against prosecution. You thought you'd do a quick job of breaking and entering. I'll take it from there.
Yeah, I can't put anything over on you, can I, Gov? All right, sir, yes, I did, yes. The place looked deserted. There was no lights on. Anyway, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I just got through the pantry window and I'm walking along the kitchen floor. Kitchen door's open, see, and I hears this gunshot. Well, I didn't know what to do. If I'm found in this house, I'm down for another stretch. And if I scarper, well, then I hear somebody groaning. So, well, I went to go and have a look. Scared out my wits, I was. And there was this bloke bleeding, something terrible. Well, there was just enough light to see a telephone.
Please?
You better come quick. There's a bloke here bleeding to death. He's been shot.
Shot, you say? Where are you speaking from?
It's the last house on Caistor Cliff, and you better bring a doctor with you. He's in a terrible bad way.
What's your name?
Well, I don't want to have anything to do with it, see. I
Better
just...
stay where you are, please. I'm asking you your name.
Oh, what a mug I am.
Pardon?
My name's Hart. Reginald Bernard Hart. Heaven help me. You see the position I was in, Governor? I switched on the lights. I tried to stop the bleeding with a towel. I could see by his clothes he wasn't the occupier. I didn't see this other guy. It was when I heard the police car pull up that I see there's another bloke dressed in his pyjamas. Well, he was dead. He'd been shot too. I thought to myself, Slapsy Hart, you're going bonkers. Stone stark staring bonkers. Well, there it is. They took me to the cop station, and I was too scared of being charged with murder not to tell the truth, and Now, this other guy says, Watson, his name, he says that I must have shot the chop as well as him. He had the nerve to say I was trying to frame him.
Were you, Slapsy? Did any of the big boys put you up for this?
Well, that's not true. Would I call the cops if he...
Skip it. You can't blame Watson for thinking you tried to frame him. The dead man was shot with a .38. There was one set of fingerprints on the gun that shot Sir Edward Stanbridge, and they belonged to Watson. Someone had conveniently left the gun, presumably cleaned of all prints, in the open safe for Watson to handle.
Well, can't you see what's happened, sir? This fella Watson's doing a breaking job. Toff wakes up, hears noises, goes and gets his gun, sees this bloke Watson at the safe. Watson shoots him, but before he dies, his Edward, whatever his name is, manages to fire back, and, well, that's when I come on the scene. The cops told me that the only fingerprints on the Toff's gun were those of the gentleman. They just fired at each other like some cowboy movie. And now he has the nerve to say I tried to frame him.
Friend Watson is one of the luckiest men alive. According to the medical reports, if you hadn't been there to stem the flow of blood, he'd have died within an hour or so.
I saved his blooming life, and he has the nerve to say I'm trying to frame him.
You working, Slapsy? Got yourself a job yet? Well, don't you think it's about time you went straight?
Well, I'm going to after this. I'm not kidding. I mean, being mixed up in 2 murders ain't funny. It's not going to be easy, though, is it? I mean, not with my record.
Well, you saved a decent man's life, and I'll help you to get a job. But first of all, I want you to come with me to Caister. Now, don't be afraid. I believe your story. But then I believe Watson's story, too, which makes this investigation one of the most bewildering I've ever come across. Sir Edward Stanbridge, lying dead. By his side, a gun containing his fingerprints. The gun that shot and wounded Watson. When they found the private eye, collapsed on the study floor by the safe, there was a gun by his side, too, a gun containing his fingerprints, the weapon used to murder Sir Edward. Was I being deceived, after all? Had Watson made up an elaborate cock-and-bull story in order to explain his wounded presence in a strange man's seaside cottage? Was Slapsy Hart's explanation the right one?
Yeah, you can still see some of the bloodstains on the floor. Look, Governor.
Yes, I can see the stains. And you say that Sir Edward was lying over there by that wall?
That's right, Governor.
There's something wrong with every explanation. We've seen the bedroom. There's no doubt the bed had been slept in. He comes downstairs, opens this door, sees Watson at the safe. Watson turns and fires. Now, that being the case, why should the body of Sir Edward be lying by that wall? And if somebody placed the body there, it couldn't be Watson, because you rushed in when you heard the shot being fired and he'd collapsed. Nothing much more I can do here. Thanks, Slapsy. Oh, here's a couple of quid.
Oh, thanks, Gov.
Make your own way back to London. I've got to have a word with the estate agents.
Yes, that's right. Sir Edward always rented the cottage for the month of September, but this year he telephoned to ask if the cottage was available from March the 12th. I was delighted. Very few holidaymakers arrive at Caister during March.
Did he come to see you personally?
No, I gave instructions to have the place thoroughly cleaned and aired, asked me to get in touch with the wine merchants, dairy and so on. I asked him whether he would be requiring domestic help. There's ample room, you see. He said no. Frankly, I got the impression that, well, if I might say so, he wanted the utmost privacy.
I see. Did you talk to him when he arrived at Caister? Was he alone, or was he with a female?
He was alone, but hinted that he was expecting a visitor later that day.
What about domestic help?
Oh, that would be Mrs. Flynn. Quite a character, Mrs. Flynn. Straight out of the pages of Shortest Caister.
Why, sure now, Mr. Goldsmith asked me to get the place aired and cleaned, which I did. I handed the gentleman the keys and asked him whether he'd want me to be waiting at table. Told him most of the tenants like to have someone around with a cap and apron. But he kind of gave me a wink and said he'd manage on his own. Or rather, they'd manage on their own. As I told the police, I never saw the gentleman again. And now he's lying there, cold and stiff.
Carr?
Operations here, Inspector.
Yes, Ops.
The FBI confirmed Winchester's statement that there's no such person as Harold Meadows, sir. Seems to confirm Superintendent Johnson's belief. Meadows was a figment of Watson's imagination, sir.
Well, Meadows may be a figment, Ops, but the man wasn't. There were no letters in the safe. It was empty except for a gun. And if Watson was trying to burgle the premises, where was the loot?
Well, sir, they did find £200 in Watson's pocket, sir.
Really, Ops, £200. It was placed there, obviously. I want to know where they shot Stanbridge.
Must have been on the premises, sir. The senior police surgeon said that they were shot within half hour of each other, sir.
Well, he arrives at Caister on the 12th of March. According to the local manor, he was alive on the morning of the 13th because he took the milk from the milkman who recognised him from the year before. What was he doing all day on the 13th and the 14th? I'm going to have another talk to Watson. Now listen, Watson. The FBI have no knowledge of a man called Meadows, and our own immigration say that no one of that name arrived in Britain in the last few months. And what's more, no one knows him at the embassy. It isn't Slapsy Hart who's trying to frame you. No one tried to frame you.
And you believe them? You believe
Now,
that
hear me out. No one tried to frame you. They tried to murder you.
Well, I don't understand. Why should anyone want to murder me?
Because you wouldn't be alive to tell the tale. Because even when you were dead, you'd go on the files as having murdered Sir Edward Stanbridge. And that's why there were no letters in the safe, and they banked on your picking up the gun. As soon as you did that, someone who was waiting for you, hiding, shot you. In the morning, the police would be there, the unfortunate householder stood in his dressing gown from a rumpled bed, and you with the loot in your pockets. Don't worry, I've got ample proof that you didn't shoot Stanbridge.
Yeah, well, how? Please tell me.
No. I'm afraid, Watson, that you're going to be kept here in these cells. They'll make you as comfortable as possible. But whoever thought up this scheme must be a fiendishly cunning devil. If the newspapers get hold of the information that you've been released, that you're no longer under suspicion of murder, it'll frighten the real killers away, okay?
You mean I won't have to stand trial?
No, you won't. You not only have to thank Slapsy Hart for saving your life, you can also thank him for getting you off a murder rap.
Oh, I don't
Oh,
understand.
never mind that now. Now, this man who came to see you, you sure it's an American accent?
Stake my life on it. Look, sir, you and I were at Vine Street together, and you learned to tell the phonies. Nothing phony about that man's accent.
Fair enough. And this description you gave me, the man, 6 foot tall, rather slender in build, brown eyes, the rest you can forget. Even a cop can't see through an expert disguise.
What's going to happen now, sir?
Well, if patience is a virtue, I'm not feeling very virtuous at the moment. But I've got everybody working flat out. Cop?
Operations here, Inspector.
Yes, Ops.
Sir Edward Stanbridge has left an estate worth over £11 million, sir.
Well, it's going to be a nice fillip for the Treasury. Who are the beneficiaries?
£1.5 million goes to charities, various sums to relatives, and this is it, sir.
Yeah?
On December the 10th, Sir Edward called on his solicitor and left $250,000 to a Miss Charlotte Basford.
Yes, I have it here, Chief Inspector Carr. He called to say that he was getting married after all these years, and he wanted to give his fiancée a small Christmas gift. He said he was afraid that with his weak heart, he might not get to the altar, so to speak.
Poor Teddy. He was such a wonderful man. We were going to be so happy.
It's terrible business, Miss Basford. Did you know that your fiancé had left you £250,000 in his will?
Yes, the dear boy. He was very conscious of our difference in age, as if that mattered to me. And now they've killed him. You realize, Inspector, that had I become Lady Stanbridge, I would have inherited millions.
Instead of a measly £250,000. Sorry, I couldn't resist that.
I deserved it for sounding so mercenary.
Did you know that Sir Edward had rented a seaside house at Casebook?
No, I didn't. I suppose the dear boy was lonely.
Oh, with such a charming fiancée as yourself?
Oh, I had to go to Chelmsford to stay with my mother. She'd been very ill. He said he couldn't bear the thought of staying in his house in London. He thought he'd like to go and get some seaside air.
That's right, sir. We can confirm that a Miss Charlotte Basford stayed with her parents at 71 Epping Way from March the 10th until March the 23rd.
Well, thank you, Sergeant. Oh, what about the other inquiries I asked you to make?
Well, she was not seen in the company of any man answering to that description, sir. She was seen with her brother, well known in the area, runs a hardware business.
Well known, you say. Do you know him? Can you describe him?
I know him very well, sir. He's a man about 35, married, 2 children, 5'7" or 8", heavily built.
All right, Sergeant. Thank you very much. Hello, Watson.
They tell me I'm going to be released.
Yes. By this afternoon, the papers will be carrying the story that you've been cleared of suspicion. So will the radio, so will television.
But I thought
that I didn't want the killers to take fright.
Yes.
Well, that was my idea. I've now come to the conclusion it wasn't a very good one. Listen, Watson, the scheme's all very clear. Fond fiancée persuades her rich sugar daddy of a husband-to-be that they ought to spend a nice, intimate weekend with no one to intrude into their love nest. I can't believe that he'd arrange a rendezvous with anyone else. And yet, everyone we spoke to in Caistor had the impression that he was expecting a lady companion.
But he was alone. I knew that when I was casing the place.
Well, of course, Charlotte Basford has indeed a sick mother. The dutiful daughter tells her mother that she was coming home, waits till her fiancé has arrived at the seaside cottage, and then explains her non-arrival. That night he's shot dead, and you are severely wounded. They've only got to play it very, very cool, and they may get away with it.
But if she was with her sick mother...
There's a boyfriend, an accomplice, someone. But where? I'm hoping that the shock of your release might get them to do or say something careless.
But me? Why pick on me?
Just because you were there. Could have been any private eye. Perhaps they called on others before they decided on you. Now, what do you think, Watson? You must have spent sleepless nights pondering over the predicament in which you found yourself. Do you think the boyfriend was disguised? You said he was clean-shaven.
I don't think he was disguised.
All right, old chap. Let's gather up your things and drive you to your wife. Car?
Ex-branch reports, sir, that the party has not used the telephone other than to order some groceries and to telephone her mother. Nothing in the conversation at all suspicious, sir.
She's a very cool number. She's not going to be the one to panic. Obviously, our American friend is the one we're hoping will show his hand. 3 days. 3 whole agonizing days, during which time we traced one of the guns as having been stolen over 18 months before the murder. The other was licensed in the name of Sir Edward. And then it came. Over our special link came the voice telling us that the net was about to close.
Agent 453 calling. Agent 453 calling. Bird has entered Harper's tea room in Knightsbridge. She's walking towards a table where a man is seated. Slender build and could be 6 feet in height.
Received message 453. He may be a perfectly innocent citizen, but get through to X branch, close in. Bring them both to headquarters. Unless, when he stands up, you find him under 6 foot.
I've never been so insulted in my life. What is this nonsense about having to make a statement?
What have I got to do with all this? Listen, I'm due for a rehearsal in about a quarter of an hour. Have I not
Come
there?
and sit down.
May I ask what this is all about?
You'll learn soon enough. Take a seat, Mr. Meadows.
Meadows? My name's not Meadows. I think you're confusing me with someone else. My name's Honeycomb, Harold Honeycomb. I'm appearing at the Queen Anne Theatre.
So that's how you managed to acquire such a delightful American accent.
What are you talking about?
Murder, Mr. Honeycomb. I'm charging you with the murder of Sir Edward Stanbridge.
This is a very painful kind of a joke.
Attempting to kill a decent, inoffensive man like Watson isn't exactly a joke. You had to go out of town to find your private eye. Or, to use one of your American slang terms, a fall guy. A London-based investigator might have seen you before, Mr. Honeycomb, alias Meadows. Oh, come in, Watson, come in. Is this your man?
Hi, that's him.
You silly, stupid car. I told you we'd never get away with it.
Stop him! Stop him! He's trying to kill me!
A fiendishly cruel but very clever plot. Sir Edward gets bumped off as he interrupts a housebreaker at the safe, but manages to return the fire before he dies. Had you, Watson, not survived the shooting, no one would have been the wiser. But you did survive, thanks to Slapsy Hart.
Yes, I'm grateful to him now.
You should be grateful to him for corroborating your statement and helping to prove your innocence.
Well, how was that?
Well, you see... Well, listeners, did you see it? What was it that Slapsy Hart said that confirmed Watson's innocence? Not sure? Then listen to the commercial, and I'll be back to tell you. Well, what was it? The fact that Slapsy Hart heard only one shot. You remember he climbed through the pantry window and heard one single shot, and yet 2 people were lying on the ground? What happened was, Meadows, or Honeycomb, to give him his real name, deliberately created a noise, and when Stanbridge appeared, shot him dead. He then dragged him to the study, hid, and waited for Watson to appear. In the meantime, he takes the keys and opens the old-fashioned safe, puts the gun he used to shoot Sir Edward into the safe, waits for Watson, sees him open the safe, clasp the gun, and then shoots Watson. Left him for dead, or so he thought. It was the fortuitous arrival of Slapsy Hart that ensured these 2 friends, Miss Basford and Honeycomb, paid the penalty for their crime. Good night.
The epic Casebook was produced by Michael Silver, with Hugh Rouse as Inspector Carr. Listen again next Thursday night at 9:30 to another exciting story from our epic Casebook.